Hey, Dynamic Man. How are you?
Hey, Joe Gaspar.
Um, well, welcome to Bike Shop Society podcast. Uh,
Welcome to you.
we're getting very official here. We got theme music. We have a quick start. We greet each other, call each other by our names. Um,
Got it down.
yeah, well, those classes that we're taking on the side are those podcasting lessons are really paying off.
And that new subscription I got, Podcasting for Dummies.
It's well worth a master class, right? Who's teaching?
One, plug-in mic.
It's Joe Rogan is he's teaching that on
Oh, yeah.
master class.
Oh, yes.
Is that that's
he's,
awesome?
He's the perfect one. He's,
Oh, great.
he's rolling in the money.
You're doing that. You're doing the Ron Howard class on how to direct movies. You're going to become a movie maker as well and a great chef.
They have them for everything now. It's funny. They were popping up in my feeds, like all my social feeds for a
Oh, yeah.
while, and I think I had to like hide them or something. But
The first year that it was out, I did get the subscription.
oh, did you attend some of the? Are they live or recorded or
They're
what?
recorded.
Were they good?
Yeah, I mean you learn some stuff.
Okay.
You learn some
Which
stuff.
ones did you do?
I did do the Ron Howard movie making class. You were looking earlier when you arrived here in our studios.
I was snooping around your
Our
house,
beautiful
in your
studios.
studios, yes.
You saw a camera that I had bought, and
Sweet glass, bro.
yeah,
I think that's what the photogs say. Sweet glass.
I think that refers to the lens.
I know. I can't even
See?
get that right.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's part of it. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, I received it as a Christmas gift, subscription to that master class thing, and it was cool. There were like some cooking classes, but they're just online. They're kind of online classes, learn
Mhm.
as you go. It was interesting.
My impression was, but they're like better quality and like better produced and
Professionally done.
and it's the talent presenting them as opposed to there's good stuff online like YouTube and stuff too. But this is the idea is like you're learning from the actual
From a
like
master.
the Ken Burns types. If you want
Yeah.
to do documentary, doesn't he do one for documentary? Or am I
Yeah,
imagining
no,
that?
Ken Burns does one, so
So what'd you learn from the Ron Howard one?
I learned something really interesting.
I'm sorry, from Richie Cunningham.
I That's right, Richie, as
Let's-
we call him.
I was
We
going to
call
say, I only know him as Richie Cunningham.
He'll always be Richie.
He'll always be
Cunningham
Richie.
to us. Yeah, there was something very interesting. He had a really cool tip. He was telling a story about how when he did that car racing movie, Ford versus Ferrari, was that one of
Oh,
his?
was that him? I saw that with
Oh.
Christian Bale.
I don't, I'm not sure if that's the one. I know he did.
That is. Have you seen it?
No,
Oh, you have to watch it. Watch it tonight.
really?
Yeah, when I leave.
Oh, maybe I will.
It's so good.
He has a. I know he did a car racing movie, and I think that that's the one. I mean, it's easy enough to look on YouTube while I'm telling this story. Um, but he did something involving race cars, or it might have been Senna. Might have been the movie Senna. He did something. But he was trying to capture the way that a combustion engine fired up.
Mm.
He was trying to put that on film, like what is the process of an engine firing up when you turn the key or you start the car? What happens? The pistons move, the gas explodes, all that stuff. And he was trying to put that on film, and he didn't. I guess he spent a lot of time trying to figure that out, and he couldn't figure it out how he was going to shoot it. And he said that one day he went to YouTube and it was all there. It had already been done
I love it.
100 times.
I love it. Yeah, I was gonna say yeah.
Like every hobby, every guy, any car enthusiast in the world has already done it and done it way better than he would have ever done it. And that he learned that. He's busy making a movie. He's not busy working on car engines.
Right.
He doesn't know how car engines
Right.
work.
Reminds me of like delegating like authority
Mm-hmm.
or tasks to others and not trying to be authoritative. I'm gonna do it all myself. You probably know about that maybe as a bike shop owner.
Well,
kinda
that's
like-
why you're knitting a sweater right
that's
now,
right.
right?
That's right. I was hoping you would notice. I was trying to keep it low.
It's all right. It's going to take you forever.
I got some barbecue sauce on
It's
it.
going to take you forever to do it.
There are just certain things that don't need to be perfect.
And move on to the next thing, and then
At some point, you just have to move on too, because there are other better
press
things to
thing.
do.
Yeah, there are other things to do. And I was considering making some bottles with the Bike Shop Society podcast
Ooh.
logo on there.
You know what my favorite bottles of all time were? This is really base of me, but
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, I think they came from my buddy Mark Purdy, who was a mechanic in New York at the time. I think he's now in Milwaukee of all places, somewhere in Wisconsin. But he had these. He sold them in twos, so they're 2 water bottles.
Mm-hmm.
Sold a set of 2, and there's like pretty much all green, but then had black lettering, and one said sample A, and the other one said sample B.
Ah.
And those, and you know, he followed pro cycling. He knew
Mhm.
what was up, and so he had those. I think those were his clever design. I thought they were really fun.
Oh, very cool. He worked at a bike shop or ran a bike shop?
He
or-
was no, he had a bike shop, not your typical bike shop, but his shop. He first ran it, so he was working as a wrench, as they say, for like different shops in New
Mhm.
York, and I think he quickly rose to the top, and he was kind of considered like anyone who raced.
Mhm.
So folks I would race with and guys who rode a lot. His name got around, and people knew him as one of the best
Bike
in
mechanic.
town. And he did wrench for some teams,
Oh,
not like world tour teams, I don't think,
yeah, but you're like
but some higher level teams. I think he traveled like domestically with like
Wow.
some of these crit teams and stuff.
so that meant he can get up in the morning.
Yep. Yeah,
and he was on time.
exactly. He could do the functional things in addition to being a bike
Yes.
expert.
Wow, that can make you a great mechanic.
I think he'd be laughing if he knew we were talking about him. Maybe
Mhm.
his ears are ringing. But he eventually was like, you know what? I see an opportunity. So he started wrenching out of his apartment, and he
Mhm.
lived right near Wall Street in Manhattan.
Mm.
And I got word of him, and I actually remember oh my God, dude, the cosmos, the universe, it's all coming full circle.
Altogether- Oh.
Guess what bike I was riding at the time?
Hmm.
The Merlin you sold me.
Oh, wow.
So I had the Merlin, and
Oh,
I was
that's a pretty bike.
it was a beautiful bike. So I was about to transition and get like a carbon racer, but I sold the Merlin, but I needed a tune-up, and I brought it to him, and he was living with his girlfriend at the time, and I remember like going up to his apartment, and he had like one end of the apartment just like his little mini bike shop. So he had like a bike stand, and he had some of his tools and whatnot. And then what he eventually did is he got a space, like a studio space. And this was like, I think in the Chelsea neighborhood of New York. He'd be cool to have on the podcast. Why did we start talking about this? Oh, yeah. So he had the water bottle ideas.
Ah,
And I think those were the A and B samples. I just always thought they were cute.
wow. So if anybody's ever come across those, we know the origin of them.
Yeah, I believe those were his. Well, I'll save it for the podcast and ask him. But
Mhm.
he was, he just one of those, great mechanics.
Yeah.
And I always loved it. He always said, I asked him like, he ended up advertising on my blog at the time.
Okay.
And so I put a couple ads up, and so I sold him an ad, and I don't think he paid me. I think he paid me in like working on my bike.
Of course, that's the way the bicycle
It was
business
great.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had
Barter.
I had some decent readership. So
Mhm.
at the time, which is how I got my job at bicycling, but that's another story. But he was so good. Like he always said, I always would say, what's your favorite bike, or what's the most important bike? And he would always say the one in the stand.
Ah.
So he was kind of a Zen guy too.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't care. He'd work on your Trek 820 or your high-end Canyon carbon fiber Aero Road Racer.
Yeah, actually that's the way the most good mechanics, great mechanics talk on the stuff.
He's
that
not
working
dealing
on.
with a seized quill stem and a 40-year-old Le Mans frame. Did we ever get those out, by the way?
No.
What's the status, Joe?
I banged on,
Excuse me, sir. I left my bike in your shop.
I haven't worked on it endlessly. I have it in the shop, so we're building some wheels today.
What
so
I
it's
was
a little-
thinking is, you know how they have those hipster kind of places where you can go throw axes and
Mhm.
like take a sledgehammer to a wall?
Mhm.
They call them rage rooms or something like that. Have you heard
Yeah.
of these?
Yeah, I've seen photos of them.
So, yeah, you pay a certain amount of money, and you go in and you just let out your stress, and
Mhm.
they'll give you like literally like a sledgehammer, and they have a wall, and you can just go tear down the wall with the sledgehammer, and people say it's oddly satisfying.
Uh-huh.
So I was thinking this could be like your kind of version of that. Like you can go to my old frame and these stubborn headset cups that refuse to come out. You could just go to town with those.
No. We save those for ourselves,
Okay.
so we can get our own rage out. That, and at the shop I used to work at, the shop we both used to work at, it was one of the my old boss's favorite things to do was get a seized seat post or stem out. He loved to do it.
You
And
love
I-
the challenge?
And I now share his passion for those because it's just it's a task. it's a challenge in some cases, and it's just something that you can sink your teeth in that doesn't involve customers or
Right.
it's just something that you can go to town with, and it's a very satisfying thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Maybe he can do a master class like Ron Howard
well,
on C's bicycle parts.
yeah, some of the it's some very
What are the go-to tricks for that? Are there? I mean, do you leave like WD-40 overnight? What do you
yeah,
doing?
I mean those
Are hair dryers involved?
you can
Purses?
you can go from heat guns all the way to torches.
Ooh.
I mean, in an extreme case,
Or
and
the Elon Musk flamethrower?
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
depending on the on the material of the frame and how stuck it is, and to what degree you're willing to damage the paint on the frame,
Yep.
and
Yep.
how desperate you are to get it out, how much you're willing to like lose the frame, because in some cases once you get to some of those tactics,
Mm-hmm.
you can destroy the frame.
Yep.
So you have to be ready to lose. At some point, you have to be ready to lose the frame to incorporate some of those harsher moves.
The moral of the story here, folks, is to grease all your parts before putting them in.
Yeah, pull them out every once in a while. I mean, service your bike a little bit more often.
Mhm.
Especially if you're someone who rides the trainer, stationary trainer, and sweats on it a lot, or cyclocross
Yeah,
bikes.
that's huge. Yeah, the sweat thing. Phil Woods, is that the name of the greaseless? What's that? The green tube. What was that brand? Do you remember the one? I'm talking
Phil
about?
Wood.
Phil Wood.
Mm-hmm.
I still have tubes of that. Does it ever expire? Because I still use
Yeah,
that.
it's grease. Yeah, you still have the grease. Yeah,
I
because
still have. I swear they have the sticker that says Cycle Smithy on them.
oh, nice. Yeah, because if you're a bike, I mean, unless you're a bike mechanic, you'll never use an entire.
No,
know.
one little tiny bit.
Yeah, you use a little bit for your seat post every once in a while, and a couple of screws.
It's smaller than like a pencil eraser. That's
Yeah.
all you need, and it
Yeah.
goes right around. And I still use it for everything.
Yeah, yeah. No, a tube of Phil Wood grease for the average person will last you years and years and
I just
years.
always like I like the color.
The
I don't know.
green.
I just thought the tube was nice.
Yeah.
Like it felt like a nice product. Like
Oh, their stuff is very
I'm
nice.
glad I have this.
I mean, they're
Are they
hubs.
still around?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's still pretty sought after stuff, and
Well, they did a bad job in selling that because that's lasted me 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I literally think I still have the same one from Cycle Smithy.
I bet they probably pride themselves on the fact that
I'm sure they
like
do.
everybody's got one of those in
I
their
just-
toolbox.
Yeah. No, but I still have that.
That pretty green. It's a signature.
Yep.
It's almost like what's the brand with the blue? The baby
Oh, Tiffany.
Tiffany.
Tiffany's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a
Like
signature.
the blue green.
That signature
Yep.
color.
So seized parts. Knock on wood, I don't think I've ever had a seized bike part. But
On a personal bike, except I mean, I guess that and that bike technically was a used bike when you bought it, so it's not entirely your fault.
well, that's the thing. No, it wasn't. Just to be clear for the record. Mainly, I had this cyclocross bike I bought off Craigslist. It's a Le Mans Poprad,
Mm-hmm.
very cool white. It's definitely beat up. It's got a lot of scratches, but it's got the cool green.
Oh,
Excuse me.
that's not very professional.
I'm so sorry. What do you? So I need a tip here. What do I do in that case when I have to sneeze?
I got to get you like a button where it's a cough button, literally a cough button.
Is there a sneeze button?
Yeah, there's a thing that I could probably patch that line into, so you have one on your side. I have one on the board, so I can mute you. I can go ahead, talk.
You've had me muted this
Talk.
whole time.
No, go ahead, talk.
Hello.
Oh, I just muted you. See, and now I can unmute you. Go.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
So, do I get any credit for not sneezing on the mic and turning
Yes.
away?
Oh, no. 100%,
Thank you very much.
100%.
So I've allowed-
And had I been cooler about it, I saw you winding up for that
You saw it coming.
sneeze. I could have quickly muted it, but
But no.
Oh, we enjoy letting people.
I have a loud sneeze.
Well, it's like people being here in the room with us a little bit.
Mhm.
They can enjoy the all of it.
All of our
100
quirks.
I can edit that out. I can also.
I
go back.
say leave it in.
I am going to leave it in because I want to show that you're a normal person and you sneeze.
Warts and all. Is that the expression?
Sneeze and all.
Sneeze and all.
Sneeze and all.
So I never had that thing with the seized parts, but yeah, so I bought this bike off Craigslist. I raced it for like a season, maybe two, and it definitely, I tried to keep up the maintenance when I had it, but I
Mm-hmm.
never had to like do anything with the headset, so I never knew that the cups were even seized. And I've never kept a bike outside, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what bike I've had, whether it's a low end junker or a high end racing bike. I've always kept them indoors in my apartments,
Mm-hmm.
and so I did what I could with it. But yeah, who knows what happened?
Well,
But
you know,
these suckers won't come out.
it's not something that you generally do. It's not a common thing to
Yeah,
pop your headset cups out. That's a pretty even for the most ardent cyclist.
yeah,
You know, your cups generally don't come out unless you're having a problem. You're replacing the headset.
right.
You know, I don't like that's not even a preventative thing or
Yeah,
something that you would just do for just in case.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so it's not. I wouldn't say that it's a real common thing, and there's ways for me to get it out. I just haven't. You know,
No, it's all good. But
I
the goal here, listeners, is I want to hang it in my office along with my original Paramount
mhm.
racing bike and have these two frames kind of hanging in, just like eye candy, just something there, kind of like I have lots of room because I don't have a lot of trophies,
Mhm.
Joe.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna hang up like a
This
couple.
is your trophy room.
This is kind of a trophy room, sans trophies. It'll be a couple bike frames, some vintage
Yeah.
cool frames that I like, a little bit of history
Mhm.
among this carbon wasteland.
I've recently been now that
Steel's real.
now that I dug up these photos for this, we've talked about it in prior projects that we've been led down this, we've taken some trips down memory lane, Danny, and during this podcast we've even taken some
Hand in
trips.
hand.
Yes, we have, and dug up some treasures, some old photos and things
Hmm.
like that. And I think I'm going to put some up at the shop.
That is so cool.
I think I am.
Have
Yeah,
you have you been tempted to use like those services where you can make like a photo into a poster?
um, yeah.
You don't want to go that big.
I'm good with Walgreens in a 10 by 8.
Oh, cool.
Blow up. I will make a nice photo. I'll send some because I scanned everything, so it's easy enough. I can actually
Yes.
send it over and go pick up some
Oh,
pictures
sweet.
in a few hours.
Wow.
And so I think I'm
We
gonna
are sponsored by Walgreens
yeah. Please.
24/7.
Um,
That's really, I think, no, seriously, I think that's really cool. And do you have photos in mind or are you going to pick a few?
there's a cool there. I found a cool photo where I'm with I'm sitting with
Can I guess?
yeah.
What I know?
Oh yeah.
Pedro Delgado,
Nope. Oh, I
uh,
have plenty of. I have a
Big
handful.
Mig, Miguel Indurain.
I don't have a photo with my arm around him or any. I do have photos of him like in my face, like in my face, where I was right there face to face with him several times. But no, I don't. No, this is
So, can you give me a little bit of a hint?
Americans.
Oh, Christian Van de Velde,
No,
Frankie Andreu,
no,
Davis Finney,
no. Although I
John
have photos with a lot of these people.
John Tomac.
Yes.
What? Are you kidding? I was
Yes.
totally guessing.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yes. I mean, he spent one spring there, one summer, one campaign in Europe. When you remember if you remember, everybody thought he was just going to win Paris Roubaix because he was a
Yeah, he transitioned from MTB to
yes.
road.
So that year, and
Oh,
I ran into him a couple of times in Spain.
oh my
So they
God.
sent him to some of those races. But uh, there are
That
there
was a
are
good. That was a good lucky guess.
there are other people in that photo. Keep going.
Alexi Graywall,
No, he wasn't on 7-Eleven. So these guys were. This was 7-Eleven.
Bob
So
Roll,
yes,
Bob Roll, the Canadian who won the first yellow jersey.
Alex Stita.
Alex Stida, Alex
No.
Stida, Alex
Uh-uh.
Stida. No. Hmm. Um. Hint initials. American.
Yes, American, Midwestern,
7-Eleven.
7-Eleven. Mm-hmm.
Midwestern.
Yeah, I believe it's from Michigan.
Frankie Andreu
No.
from Michigan. Drawing a blank.
Um, N.A. are his initials.
Oh, Norm Alvison or
Norm
something.
Alvis.
Norm Alvis.
Norm Alvis. And I don't, I don't know if I believe he was from the Midwest. I thought he was from Michigan.
You might be right.
Mm-hmm. I think he was.
He's not. He's not someone I know. He's not someone I know. very well, like his history.
I see Sacramento, California, but back in those days, a lot of them did spend time here in the Midwest because of the racing scene. There was a strong racing scene here in the Midwest, and he raced for the Turin team at some point. Both he and Bob Roll. So at that time, I was working at Turin when I was not in Spain, and I ran into them at a bike race, and we had this kind of instant connection because I worked for Turin.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I worked for Turin, and we started talking, and they both looked at. I remember both of them turning to each other and saying, "Hey, we race for Turin."
Ah,
And I had a T-shirt on, and so I was allowed to tag along and hang out with them, and a young John Tomac who was doing a stage race. This was at the Vuelta Burgos in Spain, and
I love that.
yeah, hung out for an afternoon, ate some cookies with them. It was post race, and it was just guys doing a little sightseeing after after the last stage of the stage race, the last stage of
That's
the
so
Volta
cool.
Burgos.
And you got excuse me, something went down the wrong throat.
Oh.
You have
A sweet photo sitting on like the step, like outside on the side.
you
Of
got to
the
get
church.
that up.
Yeah, it's a cool photo.
You
It's a
have to get that up.
I mean, it's John Tomac. His name is on the side of mountain bike tires, and
Yep.
it's funny because I would run into Bob Roll at Interbike and various bike events, and anytime I would run into him for years, I mean, this was like well after the time when we took that photo. Um, I would like maybe the first time I ran into him, I'm like, "Hey, I met you at the Volta Burgos," and he's like, "Yeah, man, I remember." And so every year, when I'd see him and our eyes would cross, I'm like, Volta Burgos. He would say that. He would say that to me.
Oh
like,
my God,
he'd be
that's
like,
so
Volta
cool.
Burgos. And I'm like, yes. And we were, just talk. It was just a little chit chat. It's not that we're friends or anything.
Yeah.
But
We
we,
just always had that. Like,
the Volta Burgos.
that's
It was
cool.
like a running gag that we had for many years, for all the Interbike years.
I love it.
I would make a point of seeking him out and seeing him, and our greeting would be Volta Burgos. And, cool guy, super nice guy.
I was gonna say, what was he like?
Bob Roll?
Well, you were just talking there about who's the Volta Burgos guy? That was Tomac
That's-
or
No, that's
Alves?
Bob Roll.
Oh, that was Roll. Yeah,
That's Bob
okay.
Roll.
Yeah, I've met Roll a couple times.
Yeah, cool guy, super cool guy. I haven't really run into John. I mean, I'm sure he's been at some bike events, but John Tomac I haven't seen very much. I know his son does motocross.
Bob Roll, I met once. He was, frankly, he was a little salty with me.
Oh, he could turn out.
Have a bad mood sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
It was when I was at the Tour of California
Uh-huh.
for Bicycling Magazine, and Hincapie was retiring. He had announced his retirement, and I went around asking people for their fondest memories of Hincapie. I just did kind of like a tribute post,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it. And I'd seen Roll at the race. I knew he was there calling it and doing stuff, and I kind of just went up to him. I'm like, hey, excuse me. I would go, hey, Bob, or whatever, and he kind of just looked at me and gave me this kind of dirty look and kind of like, yeah. And I was like, oh, and I asked him, and I don't know if he gave me like a couple of minutes of his time to talk about it. I don't know if he was just busy on it. Again, I'm trying to be fair. Maybe he was just having a bad day, but
Yeah.
he wasn't exactly. And I only mention that because there's always that funny thing where you see people on TV,
Mm-hmm.
like seeing him in real life, like in a parking lot, like
Yeah.
it was very like surreal and like not a great way. Like
Uh-huh.
it was kind of like, I don't know, it was a little crestfallen. I was kind of like, you're that cool, funny guy from the Tour de France commentary.
Come on, give me some funny,
Yeah.
man. Be the funny guy. Say
So,
something.
and to be fair, maybe he was just having a bad day. We all have bad days. But anyway, did you know that John Tomac? I was just cruising Pro Cycling Stats. I'm kind of obsessed with this site. He was. Guess what he got in Ghent Wevelgem in 1990? What position? This is pretty impressive for a mountain biker.
7th?
No, he wasn't that good, but he was 20th.
Yeah.
And Ghent Wevelgem is a legit
Yeah.
freaking road race. Johan Mezeu was second.
So John Tomac was that early? He was in Europe in 1990. He was already in Europe?
According to Pro Cycling Stats, John Tomac,
Mhm.
U.S. flag, 711 dash Hoonved,
Yeah, Hoonved. Mhm.
and he was 20th. Yeah, according to Pro Cycling Stats.
How many years did he race over there? Was it 2 years?
So Pro Cycling Stats has 3 years for Tomac, 3 years of road results. So it
Oh.
only does road.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
obviously his mountain
long?
would be
I
elsewhere.
didn't
But
I didn't know that I didn't realize he lasted that long in the Pro Peloton. I thought it was only like one season, but I guess he lasted for a few years.
he was 1989. He did Tour de Trump. Obviously, that's in the U.S. He was
Mhm.
17th on GC overall. He did Skel de Pries, which is like that sprinters race.
Mhm.
He got 18th in 91, which is pretty good. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, Giro Trentino, he did 5th on one stage. Tour of Luxembourg, he was 15th GC, and a couple other results. But I mean, yeah, very legit results for someone. So according to this, it was 3 seasons: 89, 90, and 91.
So that year that I saw him was probably 91 in Vuelta Burgos. See what his result was. What was his overall finish?
I don't see Burgos on here. It's just possible it's not on here though.
Uh-huh.
But I do see Paris-Roubaix, and
Uh-huh.
he got 92nd. I know he was really billed as like someone who could maybe,
Well, everybody just assumed he was going to win that race because he was a mountain biker.
which is crazy though, because like, no, yeah, mountain bikers have dope skills. Don't get
Mhm.
me wrong.
Mhm.
No pun
He was a
intended.
world champ. To be fair, world champion.
Sure, but
Yeah.
Paris-Roubaix. How long are mountain bike races? Like
Hour and a half.
hour.
right?
Yeah, Roubaix is what, 6-7 hours?
Yeah, I mean it's a different beast.
I'm just saying
we
it's kind of
understand,
like
yeah.
he's great at that. So here's one. By the way, it's Eddie Plankert who won Roubaix that year. Steve Bauer second. Just scrolling. Douglas LaSalle 6. Adrie van der Poel
Mhm.
8th. Rudy Dons, who I believe is
BDM, right?
I believe,
Is
he,
it
I believe he passed away.
Rudy Donnan's?
Yeah,
Was
he died in 98.
98. Boy.
Yeah, I remember he died. I hesitated because I didn't want to make him dead if he wasn't, so to speak. Johan Mezeu 12th. Anyway, what was I going to say about? Oh yeah, so kind of not similar, not same, but kind of similar is. Do you know that guy who was crushing it in the gravel races? I think he's from Texas, or he's based in Texas. Trying to think of his name, but he's been crushing it in gravel races the past few years in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Like really legit. And you know how some of these guys from some of the pro teams, world tour teams are starting to do like alt racing, and they're racing like gravel races.
Sure, yeah.
Whatever they called the Dirty Kanza, they renamed it
Mm-hmm.
after that controversy. Like races like that. And so he's been like crushing and winning those races. And
Yeah.
so he got an offer from EF Education to race with them just to do Paris-Roubaix, because they're like, you might actually win that race, because he was so good.
Wow.
And I'm just trying to look up his name. It's just on the tip of my tongue.
You need me to fill a little bit because this would be where a professional podcast. I would take over right now and I take over the conversation. You would
Yes.
hurriedly start Googling right
Yes.
now and come up with an answer, and then I would pass it kind of back to you, and it would be like I came up with that number by or that name all by myself without Google.
Colin Strickland.
Of course, good
Colin
old
Strickland.
Colin Strickland.
Yep,
Hmm.
there he is on Velo News. So kind of an interesting story, and I read the news at the time. I was kind of just fascinated with it because, to be fair, if he did have a good result, like got top 10, but maybe the podium, maybe a win, that would be that's like a dream script. I mean, you couldn't really write that because he didn't, as far as I know, he didn't really race in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
especially not at the high level. But he was crushing it, and so EF invited him to join their team, I think just to race Roubaix or something along those lines. But he declined the offer, and he kind of explained why. And if I'm not mistaken, the gist was he loved racing kind of for what it was
Mm-hmm.
and the experiences of it. He didn't. I think he didn't feel he needed to go do that. It would like somehow change it or make it less good.
Well, the pressure, like now when you have to do it, when you have to produce, it's different. I applaud him for that, to know what you're capable of and what you're not. Once someone's paying you to do something, once it becomes an obligation versus like something you do because you love to do it, it can change the way you approach things. It can, change the meaning of riding.
Yes. And he does talk about that in this interview that Velanuz did, which is a good read. He's kind of an interesting guy, and I don't know him or anything, but part of it too, though, is you can be a really good U.S. racer. You
Mhm.
could be a high level, even like not pro, just like a Cat 1,
Mhm.
like super strong, and you'd be able to keep up speed wise with a lot of the European pros. But from people I've talked to, a lot of it has to do with like how you handle your bike, especially in the crowded pack.
Oh, huge.
And I remember I was at the Tour de France one year, and I was with the EF team, and I asked Taylor Finney. There's actually a photo of this. We were swimming in this swimming pool at this like French chateau. It sounds like I'm making it up, but
With Taylor
Taylor
Finney?
Finney came out. I have a photo I took of him and Matt Bowden, who is the PR guy.
In the pool?
Yeah,
Can you
and
give me one of those photos so I can put it next to my picture with John Tomac? So I'll
yes,
put you in the bike shop.
it's
You in the pool with those guys.
it's on Insta. I'll
Is it
send you
really?
I'll send you the original photo,
Oh,
or you could just rip it off my Insta.
fantastic.
But point being that I said Taylor, I go, how because I'm sitting at like Tour de France, like world's greatest race, blah blah blah. But I was like, how would a Cat 1 do in the Tour de France? Like they're probably fast enough, right? And he basically said they would crash a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the problem. They would crash a lot. There's like a whole way to ride in not just the peloton, but like the European peloton and then the World Tour peloton.
Yeah.
And we still see obviously so many crashes.
Mm-hmm.
So that just goes to show how crazy it is. He didn't really comment on the speed or
Mm-hmm.
the power, and obviously mountains would be different and all of that. But
You know what? What I learned very quickly when I got to Spain was that it was a contact sport. That cycling was a contact sport,
Mhm.
and that there was a lot of touching and nudging and pushing, and there were handlebars in your hips. And because I was getting pushed around a lot, and I would get yelled at a lot for allowing myself to get pushed around a lot,
Oh.
and I was getting told to push back, and so there was a lot of leaning and just things that did not happen here. I remember coming back after racing there the first summer, and I came back and I was able to catch a crit or a couple of road races at the end of the American season, before it got cold. And I remember being in the pack and just pushing guys, just tapping, like getting guys to move. And I would put my hand on their hip and I would just move them over and go exactly where I wanted to go.
Oh, isn't
And
that beautiful?
yeah, well, then people would just open up. But
Right.
if I tried that in Europe, I would get pushed back, and there was no way that anybody would open the door for me.
Yep.
But here, I would just like, excuse me, pardon me, is like working your way up to the front of the bar,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and those places like. Those bars where you can work your way to the front of the bar. The bars where you're going to get punched in the face if you try to cut in line.
Yes.
And in Europe, it's like getting punched in the face. You're going to get punched in the face for trying to, for trying to cut in line. Oh wow, that's a good photo.
Yeah.
It is on your Instagram.
Yeah. So this is 28 tour.
Mm-hmm.
We're in this I'll show you the first photo. Whoops.
This is 20. What year was this?
This is 2018.
2018. Wow, I didn't. So, not that long ago.
So that's where we're at. That's the backyard. That's the pool.
And he's showing us it's a big, beautiful pool. And where is this?
Look at that.
Was this a training camp or was this?
No, this
during
was the
tour?
rest. This was the rest day.
Rest day during the tour.
During the Tour de France. Yep.
Oh, beautiful. That was
Yep.
beautiful accommodations. Things have really been.
Well,
dialed up.
so with and you probably know this from the
Mhm.
Vuelta and whatnot, but for the rest days they try to get something a little extra nice,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the one time in the tour where for sure they're
Mhm.
going to be there 2 nights,
Yeah.
and so they try to max out as it were, and so that was by far and away the nicest place we stayed in on that tour.
Yeah.
I was only with them for half the tour, I should say. Maybe they
Mhm.
stayed somewhere nice as well after, but normally it's like one night, one hotel, and the hotels were generally okay. Some
Mhm.
were a little bit nicer than others. Some were quite nice, and some were kind of not.
Yeah.
very
Motel
nice.
60. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, even worse than Motel 6. It's like it'd be like old French hotel
Yeah.
version of Motel 6, but kind of run down and definitely hadn't been updated for decades, kind of, and kind of like that smell of smoke, and
Mhm.
and like We didn't have a lot of that. Maybe a couple. I know you hear stories about pros posting photos like, look what we were staying tonight in these like horrendous places.
Well,
But that was like a chateau. I mean,
there's only so many. So that's the maybe the part that if you're not familiar with traveling and the way that that all works, is that there's a lot of teams. So how many teams you got? You got 10. You got
14
14.
teams in the tour.
So
I'd have to double check
So
that.
whatever it is, 14 teams
Mhm.
plus their staff plus the riders.
Mhm.
That's 14 hotels generally, or maybe you have, if a hotel's big, you can have 2 or 3 teams there.
I'm sorry, 22 teams. I should have.
22 teams.
Yeah.
So it's not.
Times 9 riders.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you don't. I mean, you can in a big hotel, you might have 2 or 3 teams staying there, but
Mhm.
I wouldn't think there'd be more than that in one hotel. But then you've got all the staff of the Tour de France, so all the people that make the Tour de France actually run,
Yep.
and the television people.
All the cops, the motos.
Yep, and then you have the parade that goes
Mhm.
along with the
Yep.
Tour de France parade.
Yep.
So all these team cars that go ahead, and they all have like 10, 12 people.
The caravan, the
the
promotional.
the promotional caravan. They all need hotels, and they've got 10 girls that are throwing candies out. They've got 3 drivers
and
they have-
boys.
I mean,
What's crazy is the logistics. That's like a whole other story too, but
mhm.
I'm sure we could dedicate a series of podcasts on that episodes. But when I got to bicycling, I remember one of the first things my boss at the time asked me to do was set up accommodation for the next year's tour. And I was like, oh, sure, but it's like August, like the
Mhm.
tour just ended. He's like, yeah, you need to do it now. And actually, we're a little behind. And I'm like, for next year? And so that's how, and the teams work out even, earlier than that.
Oh yeah,
So, because there are finite places. Anyway,
yeah. Some of those teams have like kind of semi-permanent places. Like they've been doing it for
Yep.
their team. Like I was going to say Banesto, but Movistar. What is
Mhm.
Movistar now? Who's been doing the tour for 30
Yeah.
years? They have locked down places. They know places, and whenever they're in that region, they know they're going to stay at that hotel.
yeah.
They have relationships, and
Mhm.
they know it. They're going to get it.
Yeah.
They've been going there for 30 years. And so a lot of teams have certain places locked up. But if they're visiting a part of the country where it's not a touristy part, there's only so many hotels to go around.
Yep.
And so you might end up staying 100 miles away because
Yep.
that's the closest place, that with any accommodations or that or pitching a tent.
Yep.
So I mean, logistic wise, there's thousands of people traveling.
It's one of the most complicated logistics
Mm-hmm.
feats you can take on, I think.
Yep.
Because there are so many things that can go wrong too.
Mm-hmm.
There's the weather,
Yeah.
which could wreak havoc on travel plans. There's so many things.
Yeah, the operational side of that is just it's something the size. Imagine taking the Super Bowl on a tour.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything, like
Super Bowl every day for 3
every
weeks.
day for 3
and a new
every day.
hotel every night.
Moving. Yeah.
So they actually had, I believe she was full time. I think the team had someone
Danny, I like that. That's going to be very timely to the Super Bowl. Our Super Bowl
topical. We're
reference.
gonna
Oh,
we're
yeah.
gonna
I wa-
tap in SEO and
Uh-huh.
we're gonna get ranked high. So
Yeah.
when people are looking for, news about the Rams and the Bengals,
Yeah.
they're gonna be like, oh wait, Bike Shop Society. Oh, I gotta
Oh,
click on
I gotta-
this.
yes. I hope.
And
Fingers
then
crossed.
they're gonna be so effing
Oh,
disappointed.
yeah.
But what's cool? They have like people whose full-time jobs, all they do is like all of this,
Yeah. Logistics. They have logistics people.
and they
you know.
just spend the whole year and mapping it
Operations.
out. Anyway, so where we stayed, I was very lucky and stayed at this basically. I think
Chateau.
it was a chateau. Yeah, I
Mhm.
was saying like a chateau. It is a
Oh,
chateau.
that's a chateau, man.
And so gorgeous. So yeah, they were out there kind of swimming, and I jumped in, and it was fun because normally you don't really mix with the riders. The riders keep to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, they have lots to do. They have to get the massage.
Mm-hmm.
They do. They go to the chiropractor.
Mm-hmm.
They have their dinner. They check in with their family back home.
Mm-hmm.
They will watch a little Netflix. They will read a book. They will
Yes.
maybe have to do media or press or podcast. If it's a mountain stage, I mean, they're extra tired. There's a lot going on. So they don't usually mix with the rest of us. And I was like this journalist kind of tagging along. I was hanging out with the press guy a lot, my friend Matt. My point, though, was, the team is usually hanging out on their own. And, it's sacrosanct. You don't go near their table.
Yeah.
It's they're eating their own food. They have literally their own traveling chef. It's pretty fascinating. And then I was eating with the staff. So the race directors, the people who do the massage, the
Sure.
drivers of the bus and the cars, and all these people, and they were great. It was awesome hanging with them because you're sitting with a lot of ex pros. You know, it was Charlie Wegelius and
Actually,
Andreas Clear and just all Tom Southam, and these guys are
more
just
from your era, like actually familiar. You're
That's the
familiar with when
thing.
they were, you know,
Yeah.
you can make a Gianni Bugno reference,
Yes.
and they're like,
Oh,
yes,
yeah, they know him. They like,
yeah,
yeah. I was talking to him today in the parking lot. That kind of thing, and it was so cool. But Matt and I are out there having a beer after a long day. I filed all my stories or whatever, and Matt did his thing, and they're like, "Hey, man, we could jump in the pool." I'm like, "Oh, this is great," because we didn't get to do that normally. There was no pool, so we took advantage of it. And who walks out? It's Taylor Finney, and he's like, "Hey, guys." And he's just a dude,
yeah.
but he's racing in the tour,
He's
and
like, hey, the pool's open, let's
yeah,
go.
he just hung out with us for like an hour, and then you know what? He went back and did his meditation.
Mm-hmm.
He's really big on meditation and yoga,
Nice,
and a lot of pros now are
sure.
because they realize how beneficial it is. But he went out back, and I think he went into like a little wooded area in the back. Like he's really into that kind of thing, real
Mhm.
Colorado type that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was kind of just walking back, and he was so zen, and he's like, "Hey guys,"
Oh, they're hot.
he like jumped in the pool with us, and
Nice.
just chatting. And I didn't want to like be that guy, that annoying
Yeah.
guy, like asking him a million questions, but we were chatting. And I was like, one thing I was just curious about was like, how would a Cat 1 do like in the Tour de France? And he's like, oh, they would just crash a lot. Like he said it so matter of fact.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, they would just be crashing all the time. Because like it's a different kind of racing.
Sure.
Anyway, that's where all that started from.
No, that's it. Well, I mean, he would know, obviously.
No slight on Cat 1s. It's just like it's a different kind of racing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a little bit of a slight on Cat Ones, and it's okay because that's why they're a Cat One and he's in the Pro Tour.
But I mean, mad respect. If you're a Cat 1, you're on your bike 30 hours a week.
Yeah, yeah, you are. There, I, Danny, I gotta say, at some point, you have to give up the dream in this, the bike racing dream.
Never.
A little bit.
Joe, we could still race the Tour and the Vuelta. We can do the double.
Yeah, on the Zwift, we'll do the Zwift version, and we'll lie on our weight and our height.
You know what I just thought? What we should do? We should come up with a bike ride.
A Zwift ride?
No. F Zwift.
No, I like Zwift. If you're listening,
No,
Zwift, I love
look.
Zwift.
You can like Zwift. It's not even Zwift.
Yeah.
It's just indoor riding. It's always been something I've had a hard time with.
Have you tried one of these new fancy schmancy trainers and the screen and all that?
Joe, I've tried it all. I've had the best setups you can.
Oh, I cut you off. Sorry.
You did that not intentionally.
No. So you've had some really
No, I've had the
Izoot
top
ones, the
top
Smart
stuff.
Trainer,
Yeah,
the Tax and all that stuff.
you name it.
Mm-hmm.
The kicker. I've had the Rovi version. I've had the Zwift. I'm not knocking any brand. I'm just saying that
the experience for you is still not there.
it's just it's not even that. It's just it's not that I kind of what it is. I'm not comfortable riding in a stationary position. Like it's just like a
Just hurt? Does it hurt?
It's like a physical thing. It doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I've played with my setup a bunch. It's just I don't enjoy like the heat inside.
Mm-hmm.
I run really hot.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't enjoy the heat. I like to be able to move. All that like it's crazy. So, in some ways you're like, oh, pedaling is pedaling, but when you're on the road, you're
Mhm.
moving around
Mhm.
way more than you realize. No
Yeah.
matter how still you are, and I
Mhm.
know there's like elite level world class pros who focus on that for their time trial and all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, but there's just a bunch of moving around that actually makes it feel very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have that,
Yeah, you can get stiffness in your hips and different things. I mean, there are some physical things that
Yeah.
are certainly happening when you're riding the stationary trainer. That's why they're doing these like surfboard
yes,
things now. Where you
yes.
put, it's like you're on a surfboard
Yep.
on the trainer.
In a middle move, you can get up and sprint and
Mhm.
side to side move.
Yeah.
That's fair game, but it's also just the idea of being indoors.
Mhm.
It's just something I do it when I need to. Like when I
Mhm.
was racing a few years back, I was
Yeah.
really into it, and I wanted to keep up my fitness through the
Mhm.
whole cross season, and so I was doing my workouts indoors, and
Mm-hmm.
I would ride the rollers,
Mm-hmm.
which are a lot more forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Little bit of a challenge on rollers for some things, but if I had to crank out some intervals, some
Mhm.
interval work, yeah, I'd put on the mag trainer and just crank them out in the stationary kind of trainer. But no, my idea is we come up with just a ride,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like the Joe and Danny ride, and we just this spring
Mm-hmm.
we'll have to do some riding first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We should carve out a little loop.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
say, hey, this Saturday
mm-hmm. Meet here.
we're gonna meet at 7 or 8 or 9, and
I
we'll.
think there is one podcast listener in Chicago.
Ooh,
Unless it's a friend of yours, there is
is it
one.
me?
There's some. Oh, is it you? It could be you.
Oh no,
Hold
did I
on
just ruin it?
I think I could pull up the stats.
So, anyway, no, but I think that would be really fun and just totally chill. You know who I did this with was Bike Snob.
Really?
Bike Snob NYC. He had this ride, and I don't know if he still does it. I kind of assume so. I have his newsletter. I still got, but I don't get to read it every day. But he did this ride, and it was actually a little embarrassing. I showed up on, I showed up on a test bike I had at the time. It was like the newest Madone, literally a $12,000 bicycle. I was in full kit. I'm like one of two guys like on a road bike. There are people on like all kinds of funny bikes, old mountain bikes. I felt like the biggest idiot. I didn't know. I thought it was going to be like something else.
Well, you were representing that part of.
Oh no,
you're
I
of
was the
biker.
Fred.
You were that guy.
I was the Fred,
Yes.
the aging guy who wants
Uh-huh.
to be fast.
Do people still use the term Fred? Is
So,
that still in the
All I know,
cycling vernacular?
well, I still use it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that Eben used it. That's his real name, Eben Weiss, as
Mhm.
Bike Snob. I know he used it, and I think he still does. I'm not sure,
But
but
these are men of a certain age that are using the word Fred. Is that still? I wonder. Is today's generation is Fred shaming?
do they know what it is? So he led this ride, though, was my point, and it was just like show up on this Saturday, and we're gonna go. Here's the loop, and it was kind of just chill. And we ended up at a sitting outside on picnic benches at a brewery, a local brewery. We had some beers and some
Beautiful.
lunch. It was awesome. It was so fun.
Mhm.
People were in like, there were schmucks like me in full
Mhm.
kit on $12,000 road bikes.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were dudes on like barely operable bicycles and jorts and sneakers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was awesome. We had so much fun. And I swear to God, the strongest guy on the ride, we weren't going hard, obviously. We were just chilling and riding through like parks and trails and
Mhm.
some pavement. But I remember this one guy pulled away from all of us. He was like this kid who was probably 125 pounds soaking wet. He like pulls away from all of us. He was the strongest guy in that race.
Wow.
It just goes to show you can't judge
Mm-hmm.
a book by its cover. But that was a fun ride. I think we should do something similar.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be a big production.
Yeah.
Get some listeners to come out, maybe a couple people from the shop. I thought that would be fun. Just go do some sketch out, just like a fun ride. And
Is he still doing the blog? Is he still active with the Bike Snob? Or is that?
no, he does. He has the blog. He's very active on Twitter.
Mhm.
I don't read the blog. I get the newsletter.
Mhm.
I don't go to the site as much as I used to. But yeah, he's an institution. He's kind of a legend. I don't know. That's him right there.
Mhm.
He will incorporate a lot of stuff, but his kind of genius, if you will, is he can take local things and transform them. They're transformative in the sense that he can put it in like a bigger like context.
He was standout during the early days of the internet and cycling. So things have just become so cluttered now. There are just so many different things that it's, there. I don't. I've kind of lost track because there's a lot of different things that I follow. But there was a time when he was pretty top of mind because he was very active in the early days of like internet and bloggers and
Yep.
bike related bloggers. It was him. I remember New York City Velo was kind of a standout bike shop,
yep.
back in those days, and that your Casena racing team,
Yep,
and
Yep.
there was a
I
lot of
I race for them. Yeah.
yeah, the stuff coming out of New York. There were a handful of like kind of go-to things from New York, and he was one of those voices out of New York that you would
Yes.
get a lot.
Exactly.
And so I do remember him,
Mhm.
but since then I've lost track. I've lost track of them, and you start following other people and more local things because there wasn't, there weren't a lot of local voices at that time. There weren't a lot of standout local voices to pay attention to, and so I've lost track of him over the last
Yeah.
5
Well,
or 6 years.
by the way, here's you speaking of NYC Velo. That's Frankie Andretti was speaking at NYC Velo.
Oh,
A very legit pro shop, but
mhm.
also like you can go in if you were like I don't know someone who just needed their bike fixed.
Yeah.
That's from NYC Velo.
Ah,
Nice old Le Mans.
that's a pretty old Le Mans.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, made by Tomasini
Yep.
in those days.
We're going through my Instagram a little bit here, having fun.
Yeah. What's your Instagram handle?
It's at Cycling Reporter.
Mm-hmm.
And it is private, but I'd be happy to, add people, and then follow them back if they
Leave a
really
note.
if they really felt like it. I just keep it.
Yeah, it's not open to the public, but a listener.
Yeah, if a listener wants to connect, I would totally love to connect.
And I will tell you, Danny, that we have a listener, somebody in Toyota, Tokyo, who's downloaded the podcast.
Are you kidding?
Twice. Yeah, Toyota.
Can you tell how long they listen?
Toyota. No, I can't. And somebody in Schrobenhausen, Bavaria.
You're kidding.
There's one. Craiova, Doij, wherever that is. DOIJ. Whatever country that is.
Huh.
Those are somebody in Romania. Oh, that must be Romania. Craiova, Doij.
There you go.
Yeah. There's 2 in Spain, but that's probably my wife at the moment.
She listens for 5 seconds just to get the click.
Thanks,
babe.
She's like, ugh.
Thanks,
I
darling.
think she did tell me, she was like, no, I try to listen, but it sounded too weird to hear you and Danny talking.
Who's that guy you're with?
I've heard all those stories before.
Who's that guy with? Yeah, it's like, oh, you guys talking about bikes? Great.
Great. This is what I'm trying to avoid on a daily basis.
So what we're trying to do here is we got this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
Bike Shop Society, 2 guys in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. It's starting to take shape, Danny. I mean, we're starting to actually talk about bicycles. We've gotten away from ourselves, and we've allowed people in to learn a little bit about us and kind of where we kind of come from a little bit. I realized in the some of those early stage 1 and stage 2.
Well, now they're considered cult classics.
They are. Well, they're the feeling out process. They were the pilots, kind of the pilot episode. It's kind of like some of your favorite television shows, those pilots. Sometimes, the little sister on the following shows would be played by a completely different actress. And you're like, what the hell happened? I saw the pilot, and that was a different girl, and now now it's Mindy Kaling or somebody playing the
right. Actually, if we could talk about one story, this is kind of racing-ish, but I was just curious what you thought. So there was this is a little bit cycling racing nerdery, and it doesn't even matter what race it was. The point is, how do you feel about having road races that have some small sections, like dirt, hard-packed dirt or gravel?
This was in Spain.
In them.
This was just in a stage race.
Yes,
in Spain.
that's the one I'm talking about.
My wife is currently sleeping about 5 miles from where that race was held. So,
the Valenciana?
Comunidad Valenciana.
So Remco Evenepoel was racing it, and I believe he made some comments. He said it's, quote, getting close to mountain biking.
It was a pretty rough surface. I saw Laura Meseguer. Laura Meseguer,
yeah,
are
I
you
know
familiar
her.
with her?
Yeah, she does
Eurosport.
Eurosport. I was going to say the ESPN of Europe.
Yeah, I saw her do a report from there, and she was interviewing Remco, and boy, check me out. I'm
Look
right
at
there,
you.
man. And what Remco said was that the climb itself was hard enough. He didn't think that it was kind of I think that section was gratuitous.
Yes, kind of just thrown in for
it was
throwing
just
it
thrown in.
sake.
Yeah, it was gravel for the sake of gravel. I think, they are finding these new roads to ride up. So they're riding up to these antennas, which are like at the very, very top of certain hills. These are like service roads.
Yes.
These are really not roads where traffic would travel up.
And to be fair, this isn't new. We've had this for some time now in road racing.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's becoming a little more frequent.
I get that.
I'm a little torn because I'm trying to look I try to look for both sides, like,
Yeah.
which I think we should do in
Mm-hmm.
all aspects of life.
Sure.
What are the pros and cons? I feel a little bit like I kind of understand some of the pros who are like, this has no place. Like, I think Bernard Hinault,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken, he's kind of a purist. He's like, he always called, I think he did Roubaix once, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm not mistaken. He called it a circus, a fiasco.
Yeah.
He's like, that's not bike racing. That's not bike racing. I think some people say there's no place for anything but tarmac in a road race. But I also try to see maybe promoters are trying to like liven up the race, make it more interesting, add nuance and texture or context. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I think. Well, I mean, gravel is on the lips of it's on everybody's lips in terms of like the marketers of the sport and the bike companies.
Gravel,
because
gravel.
yeah, everybody's doing gravel. Everybody, and also the events, the growth in the event space. Like, there people aren't putting road races together, but there's a ton of gravel events popping up left and right. Big profile events with $1 million, payouts
Yeah.
now. Like Outside Magazine just put together this. They've got this huge payout now, and it involves some gravel
It's
racing.
like 75 grand or something.
I don't know.
It's big.
I think it's like $1 million. You have to be invited to participate, and
Well, they're gonna have the world championships for gravel, right?
Mhm.
Isn't that a thing that's happening?
Yeah.
I haven't
UCI.
really followed it, but
like a UCI type.
cha-ching.
Yeah, I don't want to know. It's
I
like
don't want to know.
I don't want to know. But yes, it's. I see the opportunity for growth, and these promoters are seeing that. Wait a second, these kids, are buying gravel bikes. Let's throw a little gravel in there. Maybe we'll get their attention. So, I think everybody feels a need, even the big races feel a need to be associated with this off-road racing, this gravel racing. And I think you're going to see more of it for a little bit,
I'm a little torn. I feel like, okay, if you're just a schmuck racing Cat 3 like
Mhm.
me, I think it would be fun as hell to have like a section, like a mile
Mhm.
or whatever of hard packed dirt
Mm-hmm.
to spicing things up. But I'm just a weekend warrior.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally different when you're a pro, obviously.
yeah.
There's a lot on the line.
As an
Stakeholders, sponsors.
Yep.
And the thing that would really bum me out is, let's just say you had like a 1 kilometer.
yeah.
I'll change the mile to a kilometer because
Yeah.
we're in Europe talk right now. Let's just say you had a kilometer.
Can we make a show decision right now that we only talk in kilometers?
No, because I'm pretty decent with kilometers, but I'm
Uh-huh.
not like super proficient. Like I can do.
We'll get proficient. I'll get you a calculator. It's 6.62.
I know, but I have certain things memorized. Like 100 is 62.5.
Mhm.
40K is 25 miles. Like
Uh-huh.
I got a lot of that, but I have these rough versions for others.
Uh-huh.
I can do kilometers. I like I like the Flamme Rouge, the 1K to go.
Uh-huh.
So I'd say let's not have a hard and fast rule.
Okay.
I don't mind doing like 300 kilometers for like Milan San Remo. Like I'm familiar with those.
That's about 187,
It's like
about 190 miles roughly.
See
Yeah.
now you caught yourself. You might have a little trouble.
Well, roughly.
Convert.
It's a very
See, that's what I'm saying. It's
yeah,
very rough.
It's a rough.
It might be closer to 175, but
No, it's got to be more. It's 6.2. It's 6.2. 300 if it's 300K. So it's 300 times 6.62.
oh, how smart are you? It's 300 kilometers is 186.4.
Yeah. See.
Good job.
Well, I spent a lot of time there, Danny.
Well,
I
yeah.
have to- I
See,
have to
that's
figure
thing.
that
You're
out.
basically a Spaniard in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
What was my point? Oh, so what I
Gratuitous gravel.
what I
is
would
not a
hate
good thing.
though is, let's just say you have a big race on the line.
Yeah.
Obviously, no offense to that race, but it's not a huge race, but it's a race.
I thought about, when I saw it, I thought, boy, it would have been lame if somebody got a flat.
Well, that's what I was just gonna
Mhm.
say.
Yep.
Let's say you just you can argue, well, you have to know how to ride
No,
that. No, these
no.
guys don't ride that.
No.
Remco Evenepoel isn't riding
Mm-mm.
that kind of gravel.
Mm-mm.
So if a guy loses the race
Mhm.
because of he just hits a rock the wrong way and
Mhm.
has a huge tear and has to wait for a wheel.
Mhm.
Remember the famous Cadell Evans? It wasn't the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
thing, but remember he had to wait and he lost the Vuelta because his car was so far behind or whatever.
I don't, and I don't think that I'm not even worried about their skill at handling that because they're the best bike handlers in the world, and then there's the cyclocross guys who are, they're only
Mountain,
topped by
yeah,
they're
yeah,
only topped by the maybe
Cross
some of the
guys.
mountain bike guys and
Yep,
the cross guys.
right.
professional road bike guys.
And unicyclists.
Yeah, I mean those guys are incredible.
Let's just be fair.
One wheel, no handlebar. All right, I got to put those guys sit at the top.
Recumbents?
Yeah, no, not
Tandems?
no, but the unicycler,
Alright.
because some of those guys can actually juggle and wear a clown outfit,
And blow a harmonica.
and yeah, and sing you a song. So those guys will always be number one.
But to your point,
But the professional bike racer, a bike handler, I don't think he has nothing to fear of gravel. The bike though would be a challenge because that gravel was really big. There, I mean, even the biggest tire in that Peloton's probably a 28C.
yeah,
And-
they're sloshing around them.
Yeah. I mean, the technical thing the first thing that went through my mind when I saw it was like, wow, someone's gonna get a flat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that was my big fear. And then if
Yeah.
the race is
Mhm.
decided on that,
yeah, that would be really lame.
that just seems like there is bad luck and there's flatting at the wrong
Yeah.
time for sure. That
Yeah.
happens all the time in bike racing. But this is different. This is like another level. This
It
is like this kind of didn't have to happen,
They-
and it probably wouldn't have. You're not going to tear the side of your tire
No,
in a regular road race usually.
it wasn't. It was gratuitous. It wasn't worth it. It wasn't needed. It wasn't necessary. He was absolutely right because when I saw it, I'm like, because I'm not against gravel in a race if you're going to use it and it's going to be a substantial
It's
part of
intentional. It has a point.
yeah, point. It's a big part of the race. It's it has a reason for being there and enough of it to merit being in the race. But to just throw in,
Yep.
a quarter of a K of gravel for no reason,
Yeah.
and not even gravel, but big rocks and stones. Well, you can't. If you're telling me you're going to start the race with 28C heavy duty tires and prepare for it where it's worth doing it, but if you're sending the guys out, you're sending them out for a road race that happens to throw in a little bit of gravel and then somebody gets a flat. I mean, it just doesn't. It didn't seem right.
You know what you would need in that case, Joe?
Mm,
A gravel specific bike.
yes, you would need a gravel bike. No, but you would just need a bike that's prepared properly, heavy duty tubies, and
Yeah.
like a 28C, more of a Roubaix style setup versus a road bike.
It's kind of weird because I don't know who is in charge of such things, but I know that the Riders Union,
Mm-hmm.
one of their big things, of course, is safety. And I'm just wondering, basically, who decides what goes in the race? Is it the race promoter, the organizer, the owner, or
The race director.
okay? Now, does that person have any say? Or sorry, does the Riders Union have any say? Does the UCI have any say? Because they're the governing body,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have the Riders Union, who I don't know how much clout they have or how much power or say, but
Mm-hmm.
if they have that kind of stuff going on in the races, can they just push back or protest? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't from what I see. I don't.
And I don't mean in this race. This was a rather small thing.
Yeah, it's a
but,
small race.
But like, you remember when they had the Peru, quote unquote, Peru base stages in the
Mhm.
tour?
yeah.
Like those were, people were raising kind of stink about those. Some people loved them. Some people hated them. Because you have these GC guys who just ride in the mountains all day, all year,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're on the cobblestones of northern France.
And so
And Chris Froome crashed out of the tour that one year. It wasn't on the cobbles per se, but it was on that stage.
in that case, I see something like that. I like to see it because everyone has fair warning.
I personally do.
It's at the beginning of the race. Prepare the bikes. You know a year ahead that's going to be in the race. Go, do the spring classics. Get used to what you're going to see in July. Get used to it, even if you're finishing at the end of the, at the back of the group. But but at least you're forewarned and you know what to expect. And you can prepare
Forewarned
for
is
it.
forearmed. What's interesting too, though, is if you look back at the history of the tour, I'm talking like early 19th century.
The
or
roads were horrible.
early 20th century, I should say.
Yeah.
Those, I mean, it's a world apart. I mean,
Even in the 90s, they were bad, Danny. And even in the early, they were doing gravel racing back then. None of that stuff was paved.
that's what I'm saying. And so over
Yeah.
time, it got to some point where it's just tarmac only, basically.
Yeah.
So, and now it seems like, and I know I'm not suggesting we're going back to those early years
Mm-hmm.
by any means at all, but there is this sense it seems from some directors,
Mhm.
some race designers, that they want to mix it up. I know Paris Tour, which is that very end of the season French race.
Mhm.
I think the recent edition had a lot of non, pavement surfaces, and I heard it was, a lot of people thought it was really cool.
I
I'm
think
not sure how much descent there was, but I guess what I'm saying generally is kind of like it seems like people want to mix it up in some way with a nod back to, I don't know, make racing more interesting, make it more exciting and less predictable.
you've got all these guys that are winning races with a cyclocross background, used to kind of riding those surfaces and in those conditions. And I think in the future, the guys that are going to be, the 15-year-olds right now, those juniors, they're all, some of them are breaking into the scene via gravel. Their first races and their first contact with like a road style bike is probably going to be a gravel bike
Yep.
because they're not riding the road.
Yep.
And so I think that, there might even be, I don't know if someone's got the foresight to think about that, but if I had a kid right now, 12 years old, and he was interested in getting into bicycle racing with me, I don't know that I would send them out on the road to go training, but I would, I pack the car and go find some gravel road
Go to
somewhere.
DeKalb.
Yeah, and ride that
County.
for 3 or 4 hours
Yep.
with him,
Agreed.
or get him off the beaten path, and I would feel much safer about sending him to some gravel ride than some road race with a yellow line rule, and where first of all, try to find a road race these days. So if you want a long distance road ride, where's
Good
where's
luck.
yeah
It's
where's
just
that
going to be
happening?
crits at best.
Yeah, where's that happening? So if you want to, if you're trying to shape, if I was trying to shape a kid, if I had a nephew or
Mhm.
a friend's son who was trying to get into bike racing, what would I suggest he do? Find some gravel rides
Mhm.
because that's probably the most similar to road racing that there is. Long distance, you can go do
Generally
100
safer.
miles, safer, big tire. You can get the distance in. It's hard training. It's hard riding.
It's hard riding. Probably out on those kind of roads, you're looking at more winds, so you learn
Hmm.
how to appreciate and race in the wind
Yeah,
better.
rolling hills. Because a
Better
lot.
bike skills because you're slushing around on
Hmm.
some of that gravel.
That is more likely to prepare you for European bike racing. Like if you really, really have your eyes on site, if you're
The
looking
dream to go
to go race in
over.
Europe, I would
Oh,
suggest you
for
go
sure.
race gravel.
Yeah, because I mean, crits won't do much for you.
No, I
They,
mean,
they don't really race crits there.
yeah, they're a waste
If
of
they
time.
do, it's after the tour for some big sign up money.
If there's a weekday training crit and you can go work on do a little bit of speed work,
Hmm.
great.
Oh, for sure.
But the other stuff, unless you're living maybe in California where they have some of those road races, and
Hmm.
even then. But if you're living around here, I go find every gravel race I can get to and go do those, and then mix a couple of crits in with that. But so your future bike racers are going to be probably coming from the gravel world. They will tap out of the gravel world like a lot of them do, and even cyclocross, and because the ultimate is still the Tour de France, the ultimate
Sure.
is still that, and I think that's why those guys are looking at, okay, well, let's incorporate a little bit of what's popular into our races.
Kind of like what happened with mountain bike, because guys like Joe Dombrowski,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about John Tomac, like all
Mhm.
these, a lot of folks, Cadell Evans. I mean,
Mhm.
these guys were Peter Sagan.
Yeah.
There are millions of them. They're all coming from mountain.
Mm-hmm.
They rode mountain first. That's where they cut their teeth.
Yep. But they all know what the ultimate is. What's the ultimate goal? The ultimate is still the Tour de France. It's still European road racing.
Whereas
It's the monuments.
Yep. I'm really stoked for racing this year. I'm stoked for watching. Like, I want to watch all the classics. I want to watch the semi-classics, the Wednesday classics.
Well, it can be all
I'm pretty stoked.
the bike talk you're doing these days. The thought
Yeah.
you're getting a new bike, and so
Mm-hmm.
it happened with me where I'm just like I started riding a trainer again and
Mhm.
getting fit. It's never been far. It's never far from us.
Right.
The cycling is never far from us.
Right.
The fitness sometimes is far from us.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get your fitness back, and it's like it's not that hard, and then all of a sudden you're peaking at you're
Yes.
peaking at the results. I'm watching an interview with Remco Evenepoel about an early season stage race in Spain, learning
Yeah.
about gravel and
It's like first week of February.
La Comunidad Valenciana
Yeah.
in Spain.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Good pronunciation, by the way.
yeah,
Your
yeah.
Spanish is really coming along.
Well, it was fun. It was fun to watch that. I follow a couple of people in Spain,
Mm-hmm.
and the level of information is just much higher because they're so much more tapped into it.
Yep. Yep.
They're on the ground. They've grown up
Are you
with
talking
these.
about people like Laura and some of those?
Yeah, because they've grown up with.
She's great.
Yeah, she's awesome.
That's all she does.
well,
She knows all those guys.
Well, she grew. A lot of these kids they've grown up around her now,
Mhm.
and so she was young, and she's
Yeah.
known some of these kids. She knows all of these kids since they're juniors, and
Yeah, she's great. She knows everybody.
yeah, when you're in Spain, when you're in Europe, when you're on the ground there, doesn't.
No, the level of detail is great. There's a lot of nuance.
Mm-hmm.
We've come a long way from like, oh, you won that stage. You
Mhm.
attacked real strong. What was that like?
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of nuance, strategy,
Mm-hmm.
tactics.
Yeah, well, there's more information than ever, and then there's the degree of information that only real insight, like if you're on the ground, that you
Mhm.
really understand, like the like professional bike racing is very incestuous. I'm going to use Spain as an example because I know it, but I imagine that it happens everywhere else, and it's not unique to cycling, and it happens in soccer as
Mhm.
well. These kids in, let's say, Spain are racing against each other from the ages of 5 and on.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Little
yeah.
kids.
Right.
They show up with their juice box to a
Yep.
race, and they've been racing since they were 5 years old
Yep.
against each other.
Yep.
They know each other. They've
Yep.
known each other. Every good Spanish kid knows each other since they were little kids.
They
'Cause
know. They know each other beher than their siblings in some cases.
No, in many cases they end up marrying each other's siblings
Oh,
because
that's where you're going. I was like, where are you going with
well, because I'm bringing my sister, my family comes to the race to watch me, and my sister's
okay.
here. And guess what? The guy from the other team has
that? She's cute. Asked her out.
and ends up getting married with my sister, and now my rival is my
Oh,
brother-in-law.
I see now.
And a lot of that,
Interesting. Yeah, see, that's the experience I never was tapped into, but
Yeah.
you know that.
yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
You knew a lot of those folks.
Well, I just live. It was happening around me,
Right.
and I was like, "What's going on here? Why
Yeah.
are you helping him?" Well, because if I don't, dinner is going to be miserable at my house.
Oh no.
Because my sister's husband won't have a spot on the team next year
Uh-oh.
if he finishes out of the top 10. So I got to give him a hand, even though he's on some other team that I should technically not be helping.
Oh, gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
There are little things like that. There's a lot of little
It
stuff
takes
like
a
that.
village.
I love that stuff. I
Mhm.
actually love
yeah.
that, and I love that still exists over
It's
there.
got
because
the makings of a good soap opera.
when something weird happens that maybe nobody really understands, if you dig a little deeper, there's usually some explanations, and that who's married to who, and who has been racing since they were these rivalries of some racers going back to when they were cadetes, when they were 5 years old and
Mhm.
6 years old.
Mhm.
Some of them persist, and some of them are like really good friends. They just happen to be on other teams these days. And so, sometimes when you see teams that shouldn't be forming alliances, there's a lot more. There's a lot more to it. And if you just look maybe one layer or two layers down, pretty quickly you find an answer.
100%. And one of the things I learned, like for example, going to a handful of tours and all that, is how much I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I only scratched the surface. Yeah, I was in a very enviable position. I was super fortunate to go do what I did a couple times. But what I actually learned was how much I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And there are journalists there who cover the sport, who've been covering it for decades.
Mhm.
They know these riders. They have their cell phones. They text with them.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are some of these, and it's not many. It's probably you can count them on one hand. They know these riders, And I think they would tell you too, they don't have the full story.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I learned is you never really get the whole story.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll bring it full circle. If you're a race director,
Mm-hmm.
do you include sections that are not, that are gravel or hard packed dirt or whatever it is in your race or not?
I'm not against it. I'm not against it.
You'll allow some.
Yeah, as long as there's a reason for being there. Are you in a region where it's prevalent, or is it going to go through something historic, and does it make sense in the race?
Hmm.
You know, am I just throwing in 3 kilometers in a 200, in a
Just
200,
kind of randomly.
in a 180K stage? Am I just throwing in 3 kilometers of gravel for no reason? Or am I going to, I think it has to be a substantial part of the race
Hmm.
where bikes actually have to be impacted, and you have to take equipment into, where the
Hmm.
bikes are actually, where it merits maybe preparing the bikes, the full on
Yep.
bike, Paris-Roubaix style, right? Where the
Hmm.
bike is double tape and bigger tires, and where equipment choices are really major, are you have to be
Suspension
taken.
fork.
Yeah, goofy stuff, right? I mean, I don't know that you need to even do something that hardcore, because I
Who
don't.
did that? I'm trying to remember.
Oh, a lot of teams did that, where the Rock Shocks
Oh
forks on their
God.
for Perry
Looking
Roubaix.
back, I mean, I kind of loved it because
Hmm.
it was so weird and funky.
Yeah,
But
Bianchi did stuff, and I remember some crazy bikes being built for Steve Bauer.
I was gonna say, that super relaxed like geometry.
Yeah,
Remember,
real,
like
yeah,
everything,
yeah,
just the seat post, everything was like,
really lax.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
so crazy.
yeah. So,
All
but
right.
yeah,
Well, I would agree with you.
I
I
would
think
do
if
it.
if it makes sense, if it's intentional, especially
Yeah.
if it has, I like the idea, like you mentioned, of having like a regional point to it. Like
Hmm. Yeah,
this region's famous for X, Y, Z,
yeah.
and these roads are kind
Wine,
of
wine
associated
through the
with that. Yeah.
vineyards. If you're in La Rioja in Spain, and
Hmm.
you find some fantastic gravel road that goes through miles and miles of the countryside
Hmm.
through the vineyards,
Hmm.
wow, that could be
Yeah.
spectacular. If you're going, the Arenberg Forest or something, something that makes sense to the region and a reason for being there. But if you're just finding 3K of gravel road for no reason, and then you're throwing that into a stage for the sake of that, then that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
And then it's funny. There's this other version of racing almost where those kinds of roads have always been part of it. Like you
Hmm.
have Strada Bianchi,
Hmm.
which is a lot of people's new favorite race.
Hmm.
The white roads. That's finishes in Siena. That's a great race. You love that race too.
Yeah,
I love it. I love
that's
that
a
race.
region, right? I mean,
Right. That's what they do.
that's what they
There's
do.
pavement, but there's the white roads.
Yeah.
But then you also have like Trobro Leon. Do you know that race?
Mm-mm.
That's the new favorite race too. They call that, like, some people call it like the hipster race.
And where's that?
It's in France, I believe.
Hmm.
And it has you can look it up. I would recommend you check out some videos, some highlights. So you get some big names there, but they're not like the biggest names and the biggest teams
Sure.
racing. I think it's mixed with like continental or pro continental teams.
Hmm.
But it has lots of sections, like many sections, like dirt roads, I think gravel.
Hmm.
Um, but it feels organic because I think it's always been part of the race. It's not.
Hmm.
I don't think it's something they've like weaved in over time.
Hmm.
Um, it seems maybe people like some of these races, like Strada Bianchi, like Trobro Leon, maybe because they're kind of bored with so much sameness, like so many road races, so much pavement, and maybe also that's why some of these other races are trying to incorporate some of that,
Hmm.
and maybe they're not always incorporating it gracefully. I think that's my little theory is where some of this is coming from because they've even had it in the tour.
Hmm.
I think Bernal won a stage in the tour
Oh, that gravel,
last year.
yeah,
It finished and it was like dirt, and
yeah.
they're kicking it up. And you know what? I always wonder, what if it rains on one of those days
Hmm.
and those little dirt roads suddenly aren't so simple?
Yeah.
They're not so easy because when it's hot and sunny and it can get dusty. I get it, but if it's short, I feel like it doesn't do that much. It's kind of like almost like you said,
Hmm.
like spectacle, gratuitous in a sense. But if you ever had like a serious section
Hmm.
and it
And
rained,
it rained.
it's
Yeah.
going to be a different ball game.
Yeah.
Being on that with like 25 or 28 tires,
Yeah. it's pretty clear that the excitement in the sport is all there, right? It's all on the gravel side right now. The growth in sales of bikes.
Grode. I thought you were going to say grode.
Yeah, well, hey, maybe we just invented the new thing.
Well,
we could start a magazine, Grode magazine.
I think grode's been around, though. I'm sorry to tell you.
Is it?
Yeah. I've heard the term grode for a while.
Really?
Gravel road.
I'm so behind the
Sorry,
times.
buddy. Well, Fred and grode.
Oh, well, those are.
We'll have to have a little lexicon, a little dictionary list of words in every
Mhm.
podcast show notes.
our own
for
terminology.
all the terms we use.
We just hip you to something new, people.
There
Grode.
you go. This has been fun.
Yeah, yeah. I can't believe it's.
It flies by, Joe.
It does fly by. We start rambling, and we didn't.
But I'm excited for what we have coming. I'm excited where we're going with this. I feel like we're hitting a stride.
Are you really,
We're,
Danny?
no, I do, because I 100% believe it. I think we're putting in the work.
Okay. Eventually, we'll
we're-
do this in the bike shop, like we thought.
We're doing it. Yeah, we'll do it in the bike shop. We'll do more remote,
And
we'll have other folks coming on. I think pretty regularly. And I think we're just going to get tighter and smarter and better, and it's going to be great.
If you say so, Danny.
Oh, come on, man. Don't leave me hanging.
All right, man. Well, until next time, thanks for joining us. I am going to let's see if I can play us out. Here we go. Let's push that up. And ready, Danny? Say goodbye, Danny.
Adios.